It's no secret that starting a business is hard. Even if you have an amazing idea, bringing it to life can feel overwhelming. With HubSpot's new entrepreneurship kit, though, you can go from idea to IPO with the help of a company that knows a thing or two about growing better. The all-inclusive kit gives you step-by-step guidance and frameworks to help you crush every stage of starting a business, with tools tailored to help all along the entrepreneurial journey. It's packed with templates for project management, email, and skill development. Wow, that's a lot of templates. There's also a solopreneur guide. It's got freelance pricing worksheets and lots more you can get up and running immediately. And best of all, it's free. With expert guidance and frameworks from HubSpot, starting a business doesn't have to be so hard. So don't wait to start yours. Go to HubSpot.com/ENT to download the guide right now.
Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, August 27th. I'm Mark Dent here with Katherine Laidlaw, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. So there's some great news for all the road trippers out there. Just a couple years after seeing some of the highest gas prices in U.S. history, the price of gasoline is falling, and experts think it's going to fall even more as we head into the holiday weekend and then into the fall. We're going to talk about why one of the most visible prices for consumers is trending in a direction that consumers will actually like. But before that, let's give you the hits and headlines today in business and tech. Starting off, Uber was fined $324 million by Dutch and French regulators for transferring sensitive customer data from the EU to the US with inadequate protections. Uber will appeal the ruling. On to Red Lobster, which has been a soap opera for quite some time now. The restaurant chain is closing 23 more locations, in addition to the 93 it shuttered in May, which is obviously happening because Red Lobster is going through bankruptcy. In international news, Australia has announced a new right to disconnect law. It's going to protect most employees in the country from having to respond to work-related emails and phone calls outside of working hours. Katherine, you on board with this?
So Australia is one of several countries that have now implemented this. And while I vehemently support it in theory, I do wonder about employers sort of softly holding it against employees who choose to use this law. And I think it'll be sort of a tricky tightrope to walk. And so while I think it's good that they're making efforts to improve work-life balance, and I am all for people spending more time on the beach, I do wonder about it. We'll see.
To be sure, there's a lot of beaches in Australia, so this seems like an ideal place to have the law. I'll point out that maybe I think the law would be better if it was shaped a little differently. So as it stands, the law allows employees to not respond to emails from their bosses, but it doesn't prevent the employers from sending the emails, which I think would make for a much better law.
I fully agree. I don't know. My stress level spikes when I see a work email come in. Beach or no beach?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of stressful employers, probably at least, the billionaires are at it again. The founder and CEO of Shift4, Jared Isaacman, is heading to space for the second time on a SpaceX capsule for his Polaris Dawn mission. In Walmart news, Walmart recalled 9,500 cases of the Great Value brand of apple juice that it sells in stores across the country. This happens after they were found to contain potentially dangerous levels of arsenic, undoubtedly not a good ingredient in apple juice. Finally, there was a pretty ridiculous auction over the weekend. The Babe Ruth called shot jersey was sold for $24.1 million, which beats out the $12.6 million Mickey Mantle Topps card for the most expensive sports collectible sold at auction ever. Real quick, for the non-sports fanatics listening here, the called shot is sort of like this apocryphal tale from the early 1930s when during a World Series game, Babe Ruth supposedly gestured to the outfield to suggest he was going to hit a home run. People actually think he was just arguing with his opponents. But this it blows my mind. $24 million on a jersey from the early 1930s that, we're not even sure if Babe Ruth pointed it at anything.
I mean, it's a heck of a home run for whoever was selling the jersey.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend who actually reported a story on this for The Athletic, and the way that these jerseys get authenticated is through photos. And there was one prominent sort of authenticator that said they couldn't prove for sure that this was the jersey from that game. So I hope that person who spent $24 million on it, just for their sake, that it is legitimate.
Buys you the jersey, but not the certainty that purports to come with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the other night, I was driving around Dallas where I live, and I noticed something that looked like a typo. There was a gas station sign that showed gasoline was selling for $2.88 a gallon. That was the first time in a very long time that I could remember seeing it below $3. And it turns out that much of the country is enjoying a similar reprieve from high gasoline prices. And it's coming during the summer when prices are typically at their highest. And on top of that, it's coming just a couple of years after gas prices were at record high levels and were one of the biggest factors driving inflation and also just really pissing everybody off. So we're going to talk about what's going on right now. But first, Katherine, let's have a little reminder. How bad was it in 2022?
Yeah. So in 2022, things definitely sort of came to a head. Average prices reached $5.19 a gallon, which was up 60% from the year before. So this was like a huge hit to consumers' wallets. There were tons of problems. The pandemic had pushed gas prices down. Gas had been pretty cheap because demand had gone down. And so now demand was returning. At the same time, oil companies were struggling to increase their supply. The war in Ukraine led to a reduction of supply in crude oil. And inflation, of course, just generally trending upward. It was 9% year over year in June 2022. So there was a whole mess of factors contributing to people being rightly so, I think, like pretty enraged by the skyrocketing prices.
Yeah, and those prices were really good for the oil companies. They were making record profits that year. And meanwhile, Americans were spending about 4% of their overall incomes on gas, which was up from about 2.5% just from a couple years earlier. But like we said, this is a happy story. So what's going on with gas prices now, Katherine, and why?
Finally, some good news.
Yeah.
So the national average for a gallon of regular has fallen by more than 20 cents since just May. It's now at $3.38, and that's 47 cents less than this time last year.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a difference.
So it's definitely a big reprieve. There's a few reasons for that. One is China is in an economic tailspin, so there's lower demand coming from China for crude oil. The U.S. is also producing a record high amount of oil, around 13.1 million barrels per day. That's up from about 11.5 million per day in 2022, so that's also a huge jump. And also OPEC, which has been reducing supply for the last couple of years, might start phasing out or reducing those cuts in the fall, which will contribute to continued lower prices if that happens. There's a couple other things going on here if you're not exhausted by this list yet. One is that the trend toward remote work means fewer commuters. And then the other factor that's contributing to this is that there are more EVs on the road. 3.3 million now, which is twice as many as there were in 2021. And that's helped.
Yeah, that's just like a ton of reasons. It is kind of fascinating. You know, we know that the economy consists of like so many different parts. And when you think about gasoline and you just think of all the different factors that go into it, you know, being around $3.20, $3.30 versus $5.20, it's astonishing. And, you know, I don't want to put too much of a negative spin on this because, again, happiness, gas prices are low. But what could happen that could maybe throw these good vibes off a little bit?
Yeah, I actually was astonished to read about this connection. So hurricanes are the wild card here.
Oh my.
Right. Buckle up, or maybe don't, depending on what the weather outside looks like. But experts are saying that the sort of late season wild card that will dictate whether gas prices do continue to fall is hurricanes. If a hurricane makes landfall in a refining area, it can really disrupt things, really shrink supply and send those prices soaring again, which we have seen happen before. So keep your fingers crossed for fewer hurricanes. This season has been light on them so far, though we are heading into high hurricane season from late August to October. And so that might send some shockwaves through this good vibes story. But if the weather sort of holds on to its hat, then all likelihood points to lower gas prices for a little while to come, including into next year. So keep your fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, well, if you got to drive, that's really good news. And one thing I wanted to point out before we go is when I was growing up, my dad would always tell me, hey, the gas prices are higher in the summer, they're lower in the winter. And obviously that's because a lot of people are making summer road trips, whereas during the holidays, they tend to fly a little bit more. But another thing that is really awesome that I just learned about is that winter grade gasoline, it's usually cheaper because of seasonal things regarding vapor and pressure and all kinds of other stuff. So the more you know.
Science.
Gotta love it. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We have a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. So if you're not subscribed, please go sign up at thehustle.co/email, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey everybody, I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately called Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's hosted by John Lee Dumas, and it's available right now on the HubSpot Podcast Network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life that you've always dreamed of. It offers lots of energy, value, consistency, and it's for anybody who wants to learn more about entrepreneurship. It's super fast-paced and packed with valuable stories about entrepreneurs, their aha moments, their failures, and everything to what's working for them today. Recently, he had on this guest, Ashley Stahl, who talked all about her job at the Pentagon and how she evolved into becoming a top 100 TEDx speaker. She talks about evolving your brand from the ground up, leaning into the skills that you already have to build your brand, and also creating virality. It's a great listen. You should check it out. And you can listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you get your podcasts.